all of my clients are like, Tyler, I do not want to be on TikTok dancing. Just because people dance on TikTok doesn't mean you need to. What we really focus on first and foremost is finding your authentic truth and then leveraging that across your platforms. This is the business case.
All right, let me battle you a little bit. I own let's call it a landscaping company. It's not about me, it's about the business. So why am I not promoting the business brand? You're saying personal brand. Like, why do I got to be the brand?
Your ability to plant bushes doesn't make you special. I could throw a rock and hit 800 people in New York City who can plant a bush. That doesn't make you special. What does is...
You have made a very strong case in everything I've read and watched about you for personal branding. A lot of people listening to this, and I talk to a lot of them, are saying something like, yeah, I don't want to dance on TikTok. I'm just not a social media guy, which you hear all the time. In 2023, going into 2024, let's go with that. What is the business case, the true business case for 40-year-old Joe Schmo to become a personal brand?
Well, look, the answer is really simple. This isn't my opinion. This is backed by hard-hitting statistical data that came out from McKinsey. Personal brand is the single most important, infallible way to move the industry that you're working in. Let me explain what I mean, right? In today's society, we care less, and future consumers care less about what you're selling. They care more about who's selling it, right? The CEOs, the leaders, the entrepreneurs, their executive team, their ethics and values shape the paradigm of industry, and those values trickle down to the rest of the corporation, right? Working with someone like John Legere of T-Mobile fame, right? The reality is, yes, he oversaw a telecommunications company. But the bigger thing to note is that he revitalized T-Mobile. He revitalized cellular industry. And he did that from being really, really unapologetically authentic. He said, I'm going to have magenta hair. I'm going to openly troll my competition. I'm going to ride my Segway scooter around the office because that's authentically who I am. To your point, Jamie, what I think is interesting here is, yeah, all of my clients are like, Tyler, I do not want to be on TikTok dancing. And there's no part of me that wants you to do that unless it comes from a place of authenticity. Just because people dance on TikTok doesn't mean you need to. What we really focus on first and foremost is finding your authentic truth and then leveraging that across your platforms. This is the business case. If we don't know who we're transacting with, we have a significantly less likelihood of agreeing to transact with them.
All right, let me battle you a little bit. I own let's call it a landscaping company or a boutique brokerage in real estate. It's not about me, it's about the business. So why am I not promoting the business brand? Why is Jamie's Landscaping not the brand? You're saying personal brand. Like, why do I got to be the brand?
Well, look, this is where you're unfortunately incorrect, Jamie, right? Your ability to plant bushes doesn't make you special. I could throw a rock and hit 800 people in New York City who can plant a bush. I can land and hit 20,000 people in New York City who can write a real estate contract for me. That doesn't make you special. What does is the unique set of values and skills you bring to the transactional process. We know relationship building, right, is the single delineating factor that moves industry and convinces a consumer to transact, right? If I know, like, and trust you, I'm much more likely to use your landscaping business. I am much more likely to use your real estate business, regardless of your experience or your ability. It's all based in personal brand and relationship building.
So what does that mean? Let's go with the landscaping example. What does that mean my account looks like? Let's get granular. So I've got an Instagram account, because that's probably a little bit more for the 40-year-old guy I keep referring to. And this landscaping business. And I get you. Hey, look, you've done this for a lot of brands, and CEOs of T-Mobile and creators of Zillow are creating brands. Who am I to say that I shouldn't? So great. I got my landscaping company and I am trying to create a personal brand. So I take pictures of me surfing. Like how do I do this now? I want to show my landscaping work, but you're saying just be me and be authentic. Well, I'm not authentically always landscaping. I got a family. What is my brand? What does my Instagram account look like?
I am thrilled you asked, and you could teach a masterclass on this without even knowing it, right? Most people come to me. Let's use your landscaping example. Like I said, I work with a lot of real estate agents as well. That it's really interchangeable here, right? Your landscaping business is coming to market, right? The idea that you live, breathe, eat, and sleep landscaping, and you're a human being in this column, and then you're a landscaper in this column is a misnomer, right? So many of my clients, whether they're in real estate or healthcare or they're a D2C brand, are concerned about who I am exclusively in the business, but that lacks any sense of humanity. Our goal is to make you, Jamie, or you, the entrepreneur, the owner of this landscaping business, be a fully rounded multi-hyphenate, a human that does many, many things. So not only do we obviously talk about the business, your love of landscaping and your work, and for a lack of a better term, your resume or portfolio, that's like a third of what we do. The other 66% really is dedicated to your personal life, right? You are a landscaper, but you also, to your point, love surfing, right? I, as a fellow surfer, am much more likely to transact with your business when I need landscaping help because we have something in common versus look at this bush and look at this shrub. Wow, I put it in the ground, right? If we humanize the owner, if we humanize the entrepreneur, that is why people buy into your product. And most of the time, the people I'm working with, the product is them.
This is something I say a lot, and tell me where I'm wrong and where I'm right on this. As the personal version of this landscape owner, I believe, and this is where I've found, the limited success I've had with my brand. And actually, I've seen an explosion of this as far as going from a few thousand followers to tens of thousands of followers, say on Instagram, or this podcast going from a few hundred listeners to a few thousand listeners per episode, is when I stopped creating content like, oh, here's an idea that I could tell people about. And I simply talked about the landscaping example to me. Tell me where I'm wrong and right. It's like, great, you want to teach about landscaping, but to be honest with you, I don't think anybody gives a shit about landscaping. They want you to do it. So they want to know that you're competent, but there's a lot of competent to your point. So I want to go with the guy that I really like. Like, I get this guy's vibe. I like this guy. So when I went away from creating content to documenting my journey as a landscape owner and how I'm trying to build my business and literally just sharing the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, that's where I saw traction. It was more like, here's what I'm doing, not here's what you should do. That changed everything for me. Where am I wrong and right on this concept of documenting your journey versus creating content?
Well, look, they kind of go hand in hand, but your entire vantage point here is 100% accurate, right?
Well, I know that.
You've never been wrong, Jamie,
Not
right?
once. Yeah.
What I would say here is, yes, you're right. In order to document your journey, obviously there is content creation associated with that. But the difference here is approaching it from an authentic place, right? You're not saying I'm a landscaper and I heard on TikTok you have to do dances, so I'm going to start dancing on TikTok, right? That's the opposite of what we're doing. And ironically, that's where the majority of my clients come to me in, right? From there, what we really want to focus on is what does that perception tell a consumer? This is one of my favorite gold standards in terms of my work. It's the fact that consumer perception is truth. Okay. Really think about that. I didn't say factually accurate. I didn't say that by you saying you're the best landscaper, you really are, right? But if you convince a consumer from a place of authenticity and ethical truth that you are the best, you are the most experienced, you have a unique vantage point, okay? You have a unique approach maybe. That is enough for them to transact with you. Because to your point, if I am, let's say, hiring my landscaper, I'm going to see my landscaper every week on average, right? I need someone who can shoot the shit with me, who also loves sports like I might, or loves sports cars like I might, right? We know that we don't like being sold to as consumers. We want to shop with a friend, right? And that is the key differentiator here. If I know, like, and trust you, I'm much more likely to transact with you. And that's the epicenter of our work.
Let's talk about, I want to go to a friend named Renee, just left a teaching job and she's going into real estate as an agent, or she's been an agent, but she's going full time now. And she's starting her brand. I've seen so many realtors, and I hate this, and I think I've heard you talk about this. They throw up a listing and they think like, there we go, I'm on social. And it's like, nah, nobody gives a crap. That doesn't serve me. That doesn't give me anything as the consumer. She's not doing that. But, to avoid that is one thing. I get that. But if I'm her, just starting in real estate full time, and I want to establish my brand, I'm convinced by what you just said. I want to share who I am, the multidimensional being that I am, not just a realtor. And or I'm a very successful real estate agent and I've always done it the way I've always done it, but I'm understanding that this social media thing is probably the way I need to. I got to stop putting up listings every day. What is the first video? What is the first piece of content? What is the first step that somebody should do? Because I can see the other end. I see other people doing it, but where do I start right now, today? The key to life, it isn't money. It's happiness. And when you measure how happy you are, you actually become even more happy. Our friends at Gobundance, the tribe of millionaires, use a very specific tool to measure their happiness. It's called the Life Happiness Index. And you can have it too. Go over to Gobundance.com/LHI and take your Life Happiness Index assessment. You'll rate yourself in multiple categories on exactly how happy you are and get a custom output for you specifically that you can use in developing whatever goals you have for your life. Gobundance is the tribe of healthy, wealthy, generous people who choose to live epic lives. And the tool Gobundance members use at the base of all of that is the Life Happiness Index. Get out there and grab life big.
Well, that's a wildly broad and convoluted question, but I have an answer for you, okay? The first thing we have to do as luxury service providers, because I've never met a real estate agent that says they want to sell less or sell cheaper homes, right? Every agent wants to sell a higher price point home so they can do the same amount of work and make more money. It makes a lot of sense, right? What is important to remember is that there is typically a void between what they want and how they're projecting their business. Why? Because luxury consumers expect luxury brands. We think about the Guccis, the Tiffany's, the Cartiers of the world, and their luxury brands. Without looking, would you assume those places have websites? Of course they do. Would you assume those places have very clear visual identity and logo and color palette? Of course they do. Would you assume that they have really strong outbound marketing tactics? Of course they do. Would you think that they probably have a newsletter and a CRM to track all of their current, past, and future clients? Of course they do. And we all, as business owners, know this, but we're the first to not do it and expect luxury results. So the first thing I always say, if you are getting started, and the good news here is, I'm going to go back to my first statement, that perception is truth. I don't care how much you've sold, and I don't care how little you've sold. If we can create an elevated, sexy, refined marketing ecosystem, we can operate with the big dogs on day one. Now, will we have the SOI that they do? No. Will we have the experience? No. Will we have the industry contacts? Of course not. But we can still compete in the same space to blind consumers. So the first thing to answer your question is we have to first establish our brand. And that's a big umbrella. We have to have a logo and a visual identity. If you are a real estate agent, I don't care about your brokerage. Your brokerage serves one purpose. It's to hold your license, give you a few resources, and take 20% of your deal in exchange. 9 times out of 10, you are changing brokerages in your real estate career if you do it full time. You building a brand around your brokerage only helps your brokerage, not you. So building that personal brand, having, a Tyler Mount logo and having a Tyler Mount website, forget Coldwell Banker, Keller Williams, whoever it is, right? Focus on you as an individual. That's step one. Step two is taking that visual identity and expanding it into your marketing ecosystem. After the visual identity, we have to build the website, okay? I don't care about home search. Spencer Rascoff and his team at Zillow did it far better than you ever will on your website. They've spent millions and millions and millions of dollars in user interface. No one is ever searching for a home on your agent real estate website. All we need to do is find out your narrative, understand who you are, what separates you from the other 10,000 agents in your market. From there, we need to start developing content that ladders into that. Who are you outside of real estate? You love surfing? Great. Let's see you surfing. You love your landscaping company? Great. Let's see that. You love Broadway? Great. You love cars? You love baseball? You love whiskey? You love wine? Whatever it is, let's see that active part of your life because, again, it humanizes you. From there, we can get into the tertiary aspects of newsletters, earned media, press kits, all of these things that move the needle, but you can't get there until we have the existing brand, which is what 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs, especially in real estate, just automatically skip and try to start selling real estate.
I'm sure there's nuance industry to industry, but top line, what you just described, is there way less nuance than people would assume? In other words, okay, you just spoke as a realtor, But as the landscaping owner or roofing company owner or whatever it might be, there's of course difference. But with what you just described, is it essentially like applicable cut and paste across all industries?
The short answer is absolutely no question, right? I have represented or represent leaders of real estate, leaders in healthcare, pharmaceutical companies, entrepreneurs, investors, D2C brands, the president of the United States, inventors, tech startups, right? And my methodology and what we do together is identical. We only nuance it in terms of who that person's customer is. That's the only differentiator. No matter who you are, no matter how I'm brought into an organization, I always am very clear from the beginning. Unless we're focused on personal brand, I'm not in, right? If I'm coming to market a cell phone, that's not what I do. I'm here to market the CEO so we can inevitably sell more cell phones. And that's the key differentiator. But market to market, industry to industry, it really is the same thing and not as nuanced as people think.
Makes sense. The other part would be market. So you've worked with creators, you've worked with entrepreneurs in New York City and Iowa, right? Rural Iowa to urban New York City. Is there a dynamic in any of the industries? We could stick with real estate. That's easier to just kind of narrow it in. Is there a dynamic shift at all in any of that? Is it the look, the feel? Is it too slick if it's Iowa versus New York? Is there any sense, or is there any one, two, three things you would say like, hey, here's something to consider if you're rural versus urban?
Yeah. So I would be worried less about market, okay, because I've trained over, I don't know, 750 agents, 14 countries, every state of the United States. And what I will tell you is it's less about market. It's more about the consumer you're trying to target within that market, right? Take, for example, New York City as a perfect example, okay? I could have 10 agents in New York City with wildly different marketing ecosystems because one person like Ryan Serhant is targeting 20 million and up, the top 1% of the top 1% in Manhattan, where I'm working with a leasing or a rental agent in the Bronx that's working at a $1,500 price point. The person those two people are targeting in the same market are wildly different. So we first have to start with who is your ideal consumer and market according to that versus the actual market that they're in.
How do I target organically in that respect?
Well, first we have to understand who your consumer is. So I
Sure.
send all of my clients through a deep dive into their consumer, not only who they are, but also like what they look like, how old are they, what products do they love, what cars do they drive, what do they hate, right? What products do they not like? What competitors of yours are they naturally shopping with, right? From there, we have a better idea of the profile, right? And then from there, we have to, what I always like to say is, I don't care about your opinion. You shouldn't care about mine. I only care about the opinion of the consumer. If the consumer is going to like the logo, then I don't really care about your opinion, right? Nor should you care about mine. So by putting ourselves in the shoes of the actual customer, that's when we really start to move in a forward direction versus having content and having marketing decisions being made that are masturbatory in nature, right? I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because I like it.
Makes sense. You mentioned about the CEO potentially becoming like their personal brand, promoting their business to sell more cell phones or whatever. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially as they're scaling a business, want to get to a place where they're more on the business than in the business. And hearing that they, as the founder slash CEO of a company that's say doing 5, 10, $15 million a year, need to be or will become the face in social media, may feel as though they're getting tied to their business. What's the solution for them?
Well, the reality is you are not your business, right? So take someone like Gary Vee, for example, right? Yes, he has VaynerMedia, he has Wine, he has his influencer company, he has his public speaking company. Gary Vee is a perfect example. He is an entrepreneur that is not tied to VaynerMedia, okay? He could take any company, or so we would believe, and I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying this is the perception he puts out on social. He could take any business and make it successful, right? This is more about Gary versus the actual entity. So yes, while you're the entrepreneur, while you're running the company and you're the face of the company, that's a good thing, right? And say you want to have an exit strategy, which I've coached many clients through, right? You're the face of the brand until you're not anymore. It's no longer your problem. You've gotten your payout. You're on your way to be the face of another brand because that's your actual brand. It's not the company, right? I am, let's say, a serial entrepreneur, right? And a successful one at that, right? You think of someone like Jesse Eitzler, right? Is a perfect example, right? he had I just saw him 2 weeks ago in Dallas at a conference, and his keynote really stuck with me because he will be the first to tell you he was a failed entrepreneur. He had so many awful business dealings until he then got the Midas touch, right? And ultimately that is his story. It's not Zico coconut water or his private jet company or whatever it is. It's the fact that he is the intermediary in the transactional process. And that's what's key here.
I love it. Another former guest on the show. I love Itzler. He was absolute fire. Let's talk about Ryan Serhant for a second. When does a guy like Ryan Serhant come to Tyler Mountain and say, "Hey, I need your help"? At what point does he do that?
Well, look, it's different for everyone. I met Ryan after having worked at NBC for a long time. I was heading up portions of their digital marketing strategy over at NBC Universal. And ironically, I never met Ryan during my tenure there, but I was introduced to now the president of Serhant Ventures, which is his online training program, and Serhant Pro, which is an exceptional resource for real estate agents to have a coach like myself and grow through the Serhant curriculum. I say all of that to be like, it really depends, right? Ryan could have, in an alternate universe, definitely benefited from my help day one, right? The business strategies and the tactics and the goals, right, change with industry. So what he is looking to do today is far different than what he was looking to do 10 years ago, right? And so as the needs of the business change, my role constantly changes. So I have many agents who are the top grossing agent in their market. I have many agents who are like, I had an exit strategy in another business, or I have a great savings account, or I have whatever it is, right? And I want to do this right. So I'll hire you from day one, right? They're going to be overarchingly, right? There are exceptions to every rule. They're going to be far more successful in their year one than in an alternate universe without me, simply because I can guide them to build that user perception from the ground up. So to answer your question, it really depends place to place. Ryan hired me much later in his career when he was looking to expand to his coaching platform.
Makes sense. I've heard you talk about targeted ads. Most people are freaked out. I just said dog food, and there's dog food being targeted to me on my Facebook feed. You have the opposite opinion. You see targeted ads as a good thing. Why?
Yeah, I'm definitely the misnomer here, and I'm certainly in the minority. Look, as someone who intimately understands how performance marketing and targeted ads work, okay, the idea that your cell phone is listening to you and serving you ads is a misnomer. Okay, yes, of course you give Facebook the right to use your microphone, et cetera, right? And yes, believe it or not, they're tracking what television shows you're watching through that microphone, right? But in terms of you saying dog food and you getting a dog food ad, not as clear cut, right? You're assigned an ID at Facebook, a user ID, just like all of us are. And when you accept those terms and conditions, they are allowed to share that with pretty much anyone, right? We know this isn't a secret. And whenever you go to, let's say, Walgreens or CVS and you sign up for that Walgreens Extra Care card, right? And every time you buy something, you swipe that card, those two things are tied together, right? Walgreens shares that with them. Facebook shares that with Walgreens. So that's why when you go to your mom's house and you buy your face wash, guess what starts happening? You start getting those ads on your Facebook because those things communicate. Multiply that by the thousands and thousands of organizations that are a part of this web, and you can understand how Google Maps communicates. It knows where you are. It knows where you visited, right? It knows your second residence. It knows your third residence. It knows where you like to visit. It knows what stores you're shopping at. It knows what vacations you want to take because you added something on Travelocity and abandoned your shopping cart, right? I say all of that to be like, I would much rather have targeted ads that are actually geared towards me that I might be interested in than getting ads for tampons, right? I understand how people find it to be a breach of privacy, but the reality is no one requires you to be on Facebook, right? You do that by choice in most instances, right?
Sure.
A lot of my clients would say they're on there not by choice, but with that being said, I would much rather have a user experience that is geared towards me than something that feels so universal and generalist that I have no desire to stay on the platform.
Let's talk about three different, things. There's another better word than things, but I'll use that for now, that I think have impact on branding, the future of branding. some of which may have shifted in the last year. So let's start with NFTs. A year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, all the rave. Everyone needs an NFT project. This year, NFTs are 98% wiped out. You hear all the noise. How do NFTs play into the current and future state of personal brands?
Look, there will always be a fad. NFTs were the yo-yos of the 90s, right? The reality is I was working with John Legere at the time, who was one of the earliest adopters, along with Logan Paul and Gary Vee in the NFT space. He historically, not anymore, but held the record for the most expensive NFT ever purchased. That's public knowledge. I'm not like giving you any secrets or insider tips here, right? But the reality is, it is at one time, right, it was looked at as a luxury, but a good investment, right? These things will appreciate. The reality is it was a fad. I'm not saying it's not going to come back and there's not longevity there. I also wouldn't be the first to tell you like, oh, I'm the world's leading NFT expert. But what I will say is that the majority of people who are spending a lot of money on NFTs are doing the same thing in fine art, right? They don't obviously would love for it to appreciate, but they're doing it because they like it, right? They like owning something, right? So John purchased an NFT from one of his favorite musicians, Steve Aoki, right? He had a fantastic NFT he purchased, and he got to name one of Steve's songs on his next album, right? That was an experience that he wanted to purchase. What I will say is that it was a good talking point. It was a fun time had by all, but like the longevity of a lot of these things are fleeting, right? And that's where this starts to become really, really tough, right? We are constantly taking an educated guess on what is breaking the status quo or what's a fad, right? I would have said the same thing about TikTok, right? Remember, it was called Musical.ly before it became TikTok.
Yeah.
And I saw the same ad of this girl singing in a car over and over and over. And I was like, this is the stupidest shit I've ever seen. This will never catch on. And look at me. Everyone's laughing at me, right? And so I could have said the same thing about NFTs, right? This is the future, and we don't know until we know. So
Yeah.
it's quite convoluted. It's far more complicated than NFTs being good, bad, or in between. But if you look overarchingly, the majority and the overwhelming majority of NFTs have lost almost all of their value over the past 365 days.
It's true. There is a great tie into community around a brand, but I think the term has almost become stigmatized, almost like Musical.ly had to change to TikTok before it took off,
100%.
So
Yeah.
we'll see. What about the metaverse? Metaverse was hot and heavy a year ago. It's still out there a bit. I don't think it's gone away, but how does that play into how do brands need to think about the metaverse?
Well, look, a year ago, I would have told you everyone needs to be investing in this, because if they don't, they're going to be left behind. The flair and the sexiness of the metaverse is no longer here. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying it's not the
Sure.
future. Who's to tell? And I know many of my clients have invested considerable amounts of money in ensuring that they are on the cutting edge should it become, the status quo. For example, Ryan Serhant very publicly created a metaverse environment where people will theoretically be able to interact in a community. His agents will be able to meet virtually, but most importantly, his potential clients will be able to view and tour property in the metaverse. Now, is that something that is commonly being used today? No, but Ryan has created a career and an empire on innovation. So in my opinion, I agree with him. He would be foolish not to invest in that, as it was the hottest topic. And he still has it for use should it continue to rise.
Yeah, that makes sense. The metaverse, I feel like COVID initially promoted the idea of it, like, wow, this could be a great solution. And then as we got, and I've heard you say before, you're a face-to-face guy, right? Like you like human interaction. As that went on and we're more isolated from each other, it felt like I don't want anything to do with anything more that's going to virtualize the world. So I feel like COVID was its biggest help and then its biggest demise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think an important point to make there. I think it's also generational, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm very much right in the center of the millennial generation. I would say that baby boomers are certainly more adverse to working in the metaverse, but I will tell you that I have zero desire to do it. Maybe that ages me, maybe that dates me. And frankly, I haven't done a case study with 100 Gen Z populations that are like, oh, I really want to do that. But like the idea of putting on goggles and meeting in my underwear in my apartment is like my worst fucking nightmare. I'd rather die. Like, I'm just like, what a group of losers, right? So I'm like, let's figure out how we can leverage this for convenience,
Yeah.
meaning I'm an out of town buyer. I would love to purchase in the metaverse so I don't have to travel back and forth to New York. That's great. But in terms of I'm too lazy to walk downstairs and meet someone face to face, or I'm scared to have social interaction, that's a completely different can of worms.
All right. The third one, more recent, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. How it integrates or how it supports or how brands need to think about it as AI.
Yeah. This is the number one thing on everyone's mind. And I have to be honest, I don't think this is the metaverse. I don't think this is NFTs. The likelihood of this being eradicated from any of our lives or marketing systems is, in my unofficial opinion, almost non-existent.
Agreed.
It's staying here. And if you're not actively on the platform and actively learning how to use it efficiently, you're going to be passed. Now, let me be clear. There's tons and tons of chaos surrounding this idea that AI is going to take people's jobs. And will that be the case? I think, unfortunately, inevitably, some jobs will be lost to AI. Okay. However, the overwhelming majority of people will still have their jobs as long as they know how to use it. Right. And I think that's the differentiator here. Let me tell you, I have so many agents of mine, so many clients of mine be like, hey, just read the bio I just wrote. I'm like, you didn't write this bio. ChatGPT wrote it and it sounds awful, right?
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT does not today, let me be clear, it probably will in 10 years, today does not have the ability to mimic human speech person to person. It does an incredible job at automating tasks instantly or giving me a starting place. So when I'm writing a newsletter for one of my clients, let's say in the middle of Idaho, right? I'm going to have ChatGPT write that, then I'm going to rewrite it. But by God, it cuts my time down by 80%. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the nuance here. I put spreadsheets in, I have a design HTML for us. It does all of those things. Right. But I still have to send it to a web developer to integrate it and deploy it and QA it. Right. So as long as you're leveraging it in an appropriate and efficient way, I don't think it's coming for your job. I think it's only elevating your ability to be efficient.
As a brand, though, so in the next year or two, ChatGPT is the sort of the public face of AI. It feels like people associate that is AI, and it is, but there's so much more to what AI is. So if I'm a brand, a personal brand, I get it. If I'm writing a newsletter, you just said it. I could have ChatGPT do draft one, and I can go through and revise it. What other AI applications? What other AI strategies do people need to be thinking about as a brand in the next year, 2 years?
Yeah. So, just like you said, ChatGPT is like the white bread of AI. It's the most user friendly. It's the easiest to understand. It's the easiest to get your feet wet. Now, what I will tell you is one of my dear friends, the chief technical officer of Serhant, a guy named Coin, is remarkable at integrating AI into all of the company's workflows, right? The agents' property descriptions are now written by AI. You can obviously edit them, but we're talking about he has streamlined this brokerage wide in a way we didn't think possible in the year 2023. With that being said, I think the biggest thing that we need to focus on is how we can use AI to automate, right? So a lot of the things that I have done in my life, let's say for lead generation, is now completely automated. I don't think about it. And I get to lead generate a lot more efficiently and to a lot more people, right? So, I am on LinkedIn every single day. I am on LinkedIn every single day. It is the gold standard in terms of how I garner new leads from people I don't know. So forget personal referrals. We're talking about cold leads. Now, I was adding 20 people a day because they max you out 100 a week. Okay. So I was adding 20 new people a day, trying to connect with every single one of them manually. Every single person who liked or commented on any of my posts got a personal message from me, right? All of those things now are automated. And the algorithm chooses which people are most likely to connect with me. So now, not only am I connecting to 20 people a day, like I was previously doing, not only am I messaging all those people who accept my request, unique and individualized messages based on a plethora of variables. But then if they don't accept that request, there are additional portions in this drip campaign that will trigger additional actions. And then when they actually reply to me, AI replies to them and gets them on my calendar. So when I say that this process that was very, very profitable for me 6 months ago, okay, that took me maybe 30 minutes a day, 45 minutes a day, now takes me 0 minutes a day, right?
Mm.
Right now, today, I've sent requests to 20 people. I've messaged probably 15 people, and I've already had 4 people hit my calendar inbox, and I've done no work today, right? So it's, yes, of course, leveraging GPT, but it's like, what are those integrations we can use to automate and make our lives easier?
You, I think, would be defined as a digital marketer, would you not?
100%.
Can you describe exactly, like, I hear some people say, I think I need a digital marketer, but digital marketing seems to incorporate or encompass such a range of things. Can you define a digital marketer for those that might be wondering if they need one?
I have to take a step back. Yes, I'm a digital marketer. That is correct. But to your point, you're exactly right. What does that really mean? I am certainly a digital marketer. I don't think anyone would argue with that. But so is the high school girl who's creating social media post for the local tanning salon in Canva. So is the person who's spending $1 million a week on Facebook ads. So is the person writing the copy on Coca-Cola's monthly newsletter, right? Digital marketing is such a convoluted and macro term. What's actually most important is not if you need a digital marketer. I would argue that every business needs some sense of digital marketing, right? But what's most important to really note here is like, what niche, what part of digital marketing do you need? If you're a CEO and you're an entrepreneur, you certainly need help in personal branding. That is a fact. From there, leveraging someone who has access to, website developers, video production teams, social media managers, all of those things sit under the umbrella of digital marketing, but it really depends on your specific use case, who you are, what you're looking to do in terms of like what niche of digital marketing you really need to pursue.
Got you. Your agency, if I heard right, signs contracts, but doesn't have a timeline associated with that contract. In other words, I'm not locked in for a year or 2 years or 6 months or whatever with you. Why is that an advantage for you? And why would you recommend people source agencies that have that nuance?
Well, look, no agency, I don't want to say no agency, but 99% of agencies don't operate that way, right? I started my company, Henry Street Creative, because having worked on the agency side and hiring multiple multi-million-dollar agencies, spending millions of dollars a month on these agencies, right? I learned they intrinsically don't work, especially for the individual entrepreneur. There is no way, okay, that an individual real estate agent is coming into a New York City-based branding firm and paying $250,000 for a logo. It makes no sense. It's not recoupable. There's no ROI there, okay? However, they service Fortune 100 companies and they have a model that works for them. That's great. Okay. However, when we talk about the individual user, I don't lock people into long-term contracts, meaning, yeah, we're going to have a written agreement. So you know what I have to deliver to you and so that you know what you have to pay me. But beyond that, my work speaks for itself. If I have to tie someone to a year-long contract to keep them in my business, then I'm doing something wrong and they're spending their money not wisely. I retain my clients because I'm dedicated to the end product and seeing them build their empire. That's why I have an outrageously high retention rate. That's why I have a wait list, because my clients aren't leaving, even though they could. They just have to give me 30 days notice and say, thanks so much, Tyler, let's be friends, right? And of course, people have left the agency and continue to leave the agency because they get out of the business, or they have already, quote unquote, learned what they needed to learn. That's fine, right? We'll go to the wait list, right? But I think that is, if I'm constantly telling other people to innovate and break the status quo, I too, as a business owner and an agency owner, have to say, well, what am I going to do differently here? And that's one of the many things that we do differently. No contract terms outside of, the first 90 days.
Makes sense. I like that. The last 24 months or so, last 2 years, and we're going into 2024 now, there's 2 talking points when this question is asked. And that is, the question is essentially, what are the platforms? What are the different places people should be thinking about going into? And we're going to call it 2024 since we're going there. The 2 talking points that you always hear are, remember, YouTube is the second largest search engine and it's owned by the first largest search engine. So you want to be on YouTube because of the search engine capability. And the other one was always TikTok still has room to grow. Where does that stand? Where are we going into 2024? Not even, maybe there's a new platform I'm not aware of that's like hot and heavy like TikTok. I don't think so. But where do you believe the next year, 2 years is going? What platforms people need to think about, start on, wherever you want to take that?
Yeah. So look, I'll give my, my blanket disclaimer at the beginning is like, no one here is a fortune teller. If I was, I'd be much richer. Right. But the reality is we constantly have to be tracking trends. What I find is the majority of my clients come to me wildly overwhelmed, right? Because I have to be on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest. What did I miss? LinkedIn.
Facebook,
Yeah,
Snapchat, yeah, sure,
Facebook,
LinkedIn.
all of them, right?
Yep.
And ultimately what happens is we execute poorly on all of them, right? Instead of saying, okay, we go back to the thing we just talked about. Where are my consumers actually transacting? Well, I'm targeting 65-year-olds. They're not on TikTok. Okay. I'm targeting second-time home buyers. Sure, their kids are on TikTok, but the majority of them aren't. Okay. Not that none of them are, but the majority of them aren't. I'm probably going to target them in two places. I'm going to target them on Facebook, Instagram, which I look at as the same platform at this point, and LinkedIn. Why? Because LinkedIn, highest net worth individuals on LinkedIn. That's where the decision makers go. Why Facebook? Older demographic, right? We know these things statistically. So, I always say limitations are that which free us. Right? Really think about that. Instead of trying to do everything shittily, let's try to do two things really, really, really well. Wouldn't you love to be the #1 podcaster on Instagram while you were also the last podcaster on YouTube? That's still a damn good career, right? Yeah. Ultimately, what we have to do is say, let's focus on two platforms to begin with. Once we focus on those and have them in a really good spot, then we add, then we build, then we scale. We don't start a company and immediately hire 100 people because we don't have money to do that. We have to have revenue first and scale appropriately. That's what I recommend here. So if you it differs business to business, age to age, but I always focus on the consumer. Real estate is the perfect example. Again, not to, beat a dead horse here, but, if you are a legacy provider, meaning you're at, let's say, Douglas Elliman here in the city. You've been selling for 45 years, 50 years. You service all of the luxury buildings on Billionaires Row up off Park Avenue. You come from family money. You love, vacationing in the Hamptons. You're obviously going to be targeting people on LinkedIn and Facebook. That is where they are. If you are 24 years old, you just got your license, okay, you're targeting all of your friends from sorority who are getting married and their parents are helping them with the down payment on their first home. You're definitely on TikTok and Instagram, right? It really depends on the consumer. So moral of the story is pick two platforms, engage in those consistently as if your life and your job depended on it, because this just in, it does. And then from there, as you get really comfortable with those platforms, then feel free to expand.
At what point does somebody, well, let's ask it this way. If I'm saying, okay, I got it. I need to build my personal brand. I want to have a brand. What are 2 or 3 attributes I need to look for in call it a digital marketer or an agency like yours? I think you're working with probably people that are a little further down the line. Sure. But if I'm starting out, maybe they get on your wait list, but where do I go? How do I vet a potential agency?
So again, full circle moment, Jimmy, right? You have to find someone that you know, like, and trust. Okay. I close a lot of my clients because I speak to them like a person. I never sell anything to anyone. Yes, I have a business. Yes, it's successful. Yes, I offer a service and people pay me for that service. Certainly. Right. But I offer free consultations to anyone who goes to my website and fills out the form. Okay. And let me be clear. People think that I'm then going to pitch them on my service. That is not my methodology, because that's what traditional agencies do. I want you to have a dialogue with me. I want to learn about your business because genuinely I'm a nerd and I love it. Okay. And then in those 30 minutes, I'm going to help you get on the right path. And if that's the last time I ever hear from you, fantastic. Because if those 30 minutes influenced your business and your career, that is time well spent. And that is the God's honest truth. I live my life and I built my business on the philosophy that lighting someone else's candle does not extinguish my own, right? And so it is my point every single day. I have it time blocked in my calendar that I take 4 calls every single day with pro bono clients, right? And those are initial consultations. They chat with me And let me tell you, I don't have to sell anything. 30-40% of those people will transact with me or the agency I own in the next calendar year without me selling, right? And so that's what really separates me. I want every single person to be with the right strategist, to be with the right coach, even if that's not me. There are many times, I would say the overwhelming majority of times I meet with someone and I'm like, I'm not the right person for you, but I've got someone, right? And I connect them with someone else because ultimately I don't succeed if they don't succeed. And I want to make sure they're being set up for success. So finding someone who has expertise in your niche, in your market to achieve the things you want. But most importantly, you need someone that you can know, like, and trust.
Yeah, that makes sense. The sales thing is interesting to me. I feel like that there's influencer wise, you hear people that have the hard sell approach. Even Alex Hormozy gets into this a little bit, like
Yeah.
managing the objection and overcoming it. And maybe that works more specifically in the gym environment, right? I don't know. But there's others, and I'm one of these, who don't believe that hard selling, it's just too, it's been exposed. We all know what it is now, right? So the approach that you gave of, hey, it's okay to let them out of the room. They'll come back if you're in service to them. How frequently do you see brands actually executing that? In other words, your approach, has it been widely adopted at all yet?
The number one reason my clients are failing before they come to me is because they don't have this approach, right? No one here this weekend is running to the used car sales lot to be sold to. Like, no one finds that thrilling. The second we hear as consumers, we want you to purchase something from us, we immediately cut off, right? That's why, going back to your first statement today, when a real estate agent posts just listed 123 Main Street for $1 million, I don't even live in your market. I could care less what you're selling, right? I'm following you for you, not for mediocre Idaho real estate, right? And so what's important to remember here is it's not about the sell. It's about the person you're going to be interacting with. And let me tell you, I've done all the sales training. I follow all the influencers, and I understand where they're coming from. Like, maybe if I'm door to door selling solar, this works, but like, they're in my inbox because they asked to be here. I didn't reach out to them, right? And so ultimately, I have found by me being kind and generous and offering to help, that will build the trust and relationship that we need in order to close the deal. And I have proven that time and time again. So whenever I work with clients, we do all of the traditional selling techniques, right? We always have call to actions. We're sending out a newsletter. We're not stupid. We want people to convert. We need their money, right? But it's how we nuance it. I'm much more likely to transact with you, Jamie, the real estate agent in your market, after our conversation today, because I already know, like, and trust you.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I always say I've raised more capital when I get on a call that somebody is set up with me. They want to invest, but I raise more capital for deals when I serve versus sell. When I go into it, understanding their needs. Sometimes, to your point, I'm raising for multifamily. It sounds like you want self-storage. Let me direct you to another operator that is probably a little bit more aligned with you. So I love that. All right. I want to ask a couple personal things before we wrap up. But before we do, going into 2024, I want to distill this down. First three things. We talked about a lot of different concepts. Just boil this down for me. First three things I need to do to launch my personal brand.
Number one, we have to first identify who you are. And that sounds so macro and ethereal, and that's why I hate saying it. But if we don't understand from an authentic place who you are, we can never build the ecosystem, okay? Leads me to number two. We have to build the ecosystem. You claim to be a luxury service provider, whether you're a landscaper or you have a new hair care product or you're a real estate agent. But 9 times out of 10, your ecosystem looks that of Walmart, right? It's the value brand versus the luxury brand. We know 85% of consumers, according to McKinsey, will not transact with a brand without a website, yet 50% of agents don't have a website, right? They have that like really shitty template from their brokerage, right? Which does nothing other than says, I'm lazy and unoriginal and not a luxury service provider, okay? That's number two, building the marketing ecosystem. And 3, having a mentor. I have a mentor. You probably have a mentor. I don't know what I don't know. Okay. I haven't been 45 years old in industry yet. I haven't done it. Right. And my agents or my clients haven't done the go-to-market strategy that I've done hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times, right? So finding a mentor who can help guide you and hold you accountable always, always, always pays dividends, right? I always say that I am the ROI based provider. If you're not making money on the money you're paying me, please fire me because it's pointless, right? And I say that to them and I remind them, and we run the numbers every month, and I've yet to not be ROI positive for a client, right? And that's what we want to continue focusing on.
I love it. I love it. Great, great, great tactical insights. You've got some awards, Tonys, Emmys, all these different things. What's the story there? Where you Broadway? We're talking branding and digital marketing and NFTs, but then there's a creative side. Well, I mean, there's an artistic side. We'll say to you that we haven't talked about. Just give me a little bit on that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, like everyone, I have a very unique and strange trajectory that's gotten to this room today, has gotten me to this room today. I grew up in small town Texas. I went to school for theater. I moved to New York City, always being the most self-motivated hustler in my class, in my room, in my group. Like, that's just who I am. Not that that's good or bad. It's just who I am, right? And so I moved to New York City immediately after college, hustled. I knew that the only way I could achieve success, specifically my idea of success, was starring on Broadway, right? I wanted all of these things. I wanted my Tony Awards. I wanted my front page spread on the New York Times. I wanted people to scream my name when I walked into a theater. But the only way I could do that was being in Book of Mormon or Wicked or whatever it was, right? The universe had wildly different plans, and thank God it did, right? I had significant experience stage managing also. And through a long story I won't bore you with, I got my first Broadway contract as a production assistant by the age of 23, right? I did about 5 Broadway shows back to back. I met some incredible people. And then I had an aha moment. And the aha moment was, I'm done waiting. I'm done waiting for permission. I'm done waiting for a director to call me and hire me. I'm done waiting for a stage manager to call and hire me. I'm going to create my own work. So I created a YouTube series that was just a passion project. Me, a Broadway star, sitting on my couch, drinking wine, playing a game. No one had even heard of an influencer at the time. I just happened to be arguably one of the first influencers on Broadway. I built that series. It was eventually acquired by Playbill, the Broadway legacy brand. We were sending that to 3 million people in 168 countries. I got all of those things I wanted. My front page spread, people screaming, yelling, security guards when I walked into the theater, all because of this show that I created. And then that transitioned me to producing, right? And I was then able to sit behind the table and be like, okay, how can we change the scape of Broadway? And so I've been doing that for quite some time. And that's where, I've been very, very fortunate to have won 3 Tonys, a Grammy, and Olivier. No Emmys yet, but that's on its way, right? That's on its way. And I've had success there, but it really does come from a place of me pursuing my truth, which is unapologetically being me, which is a Broadway loving digital strategist who tries to be kind and generous to all, and falls short sometimes, but also is always coming from a good place. So that's my story of authenticity.
What I love about that is I think a lot of people pause on starting because they're afraid that they're not making the right first choice. Right. And you said it, everybody has a convoluted path. You started out with the, maybe boilerplate dream of I will be the star of Hamilton, or whatever it might be. And you got to the outcome in a different way, but you wouldn't have had that if you didn't at least start, which I think is great. What is the push now? You're on a bunch of stuff. I see you on a lot of podcasts. You were sent to us through a production agency or a podcast booking agency. What's the push now for you? Why are you getting out there so much? Why are you everywhere? Why is this boilerplate for you at this point, doing another podcast?
Well, I'm the king of personal brands, so wouldn't I be kind of hypocritical if I also didn't have a strong personal brand? What I'll tell you is my personal brand comes from a place of authenticity. It comes from a place of truth. I love, if you can't tell, talking. I love, I'm wildly outgoing. I've never been called introverted once in my life. And I love helping people. I genuinely love public speaking. And I think that's the next thing, right? I'm never satisfied, which is my biggest strength and my biggest curse. And so it's like, how can I be bigger, better, known by more? Why? So that I can help more people. And me meeting you today is just part of that journey. And I'm really thankful for having been given the opportunity.
Can I test how much you love all that?
Yeah, go ahead.
If I give you $100 million today,
Uh-huh.
what of all of that do you still do?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I would still public speak in a heartbeat, right? I would still lead strategy in a heartbeat. I
With
don't do that.
100 million in the bank, you would be doing digital strategy free sessions for a day with 100 mil in the bank.
Absolutely. I know that, like I know that, like I know that. Will I be sitting on every client call? Nope, certainly wouldn't. Will I be writing people's social copy? Nope, certainly wouldn't, right? With my $100 million in the bank. But me having a profound impact on the brands and the people that America and the world knows and loves is the honor of my career. And me being able to, like today, it happened to me again. I'm sitting on a call for free with a woman. She asked me some personal questions about her business. I help her. I say, look, I'm going to do this for you. After work today, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And she's sobbing, right? Because she's like, oh my God, that's going to change my life. And I'm like, it literally takes me 15 minutes. I have it on my computer. I have to copy and paste it, right? That brings me joy, and that brings me value and belonging where your $100 million could never. But don't get me wrong, I'll take it any day because I would love a penthouse.
Major test for me at one point. I saw a billboard for $400 million for like the Powerball or whatever. And this is when I had my executive career with a big insurance company. And I thought to myself, like, if I won that tomorrow, what am I doing today that I would stop doing? And what am I doing today that I would continue doing? And I had just started this. Love podcasting. Like you, people don't believe me when I say it. I'm like, I'd podcast. I higher production value. It will be more Stephen Bartlett than what I'm doing now. We do about half of our stuff in person, so I would do a lot more in person. But podcast, I love the art of it. But I wouldn't be doing the job that I had, which was a real eye opener for me. Like, I got to find my way out of that and into this. So love that, man. How do people learn more about you, about all of what you're doing? Where can people go?
Well, look, the offer's on the table. There is no catch. There is no IOU. I offer free consults on personal brand to anyone and everyone. You can check me out at my website, tylergmount.com, and sign up for a free session there. I'd love to meet you, find out more about your business. I promise there's no sales pitch coming at the end of it. And then obviously I'd love to connect on social, Tyler G Mount on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
You need the G on that Tyler G Mount, because otherwise you go to like a TV mounting website or something. Don't worry.
I've tried to purchase that trademark many a times. We're still working on that. But TylerMount.com is not me. TylerGMount.com is certainly.
Is Mount the real name, or is that a Broadway name?
Oh, that's a great question. No, that's my God-given name, Tyler Mount.
It's not bad. Not bad for Broadway.
My parents knew what they were doing. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.